Alright, it is time to talk Final Fantasy pre-release, some tips and tricks I have for you to do well at your pre-release. If you don't have 4 or 5 hours for a full set review, don't worry, we got you covered. This is going to be like a 10-ish minute video just talking about what I think is going on in the set, some tips to sort through your sealed pool, some cards that might fly under the radar if you're just looking at them for the first time that maybe don't look that exciting, but I think are pretty good. If you do have time for a 4-hour set review, you can go check that out. That's earlier in the channel. We posted that yesterday. But if you don't, well, let's just jump in. So, first of all, I kind of want to talk about some mechanics and some stuff that has panned out pretty well. So, the summon creatures. These are good. These get a thumbs up from me. I think almost all of the summons have been pretty strong. Like, from all rarities, the common ones are pretty good. There's some real banger uncommons, something like Summon Fenrir, which just, one of the best uncommons in the set. Also, some of the best rares in the set are also these summons. So, Summon Primal Odin, awesome card. Summon Leviathan, excellent card too. But even going down to the commons, like Summon Fat Chocobo. 5 mana, 4/4 summon that makes a 2/2 Chocobo token and gives your creatures trample for 2 turns. This card has been really, really strong. And even kind of the medium ones, like Summon GF Ifrit. I found this card to be pretty good. So, I would just say when you're opening your sealed pool, put all the summons to the side, because I think almost all of them, if you're in the colors of the summons, you're going to want to play them. Next up, I want to talk about the other big mechanic in the set, which is Job Select. So it's these equipment that come in with 1/1 tokens, and the equipment auto-equip to those 1/1 tokens, and you get some nice bonuses. So another mechanic that I think is just generally pretty good, maybe a little bit less so than the summons. Like, I don't think all of the Job Select cards are just like, yep, I want to play this, I want to put this in my deck, but I think more of them not are pretty good. So White Mage's Staff has been a pretty good common. I've really liked this one. Some really good uncommons, Samurai's Katana, for example, basically 3 mana, 3/3 haste trample that, you can move this equipment around for 5 mana. This one's been really, really strong. Some of the weaker ones, like 4 mana, Warrior Sword, okay, it's a fine filler card. There are some that are like, okay, you really have to have the right deck. So, like, Red Mage's Rapier, for example, this one, really, you have to be super spell heavy. And then you've got some, like, Sage's Newliths, which I just don't think is all that good. But for the most part, if you're, like, on the fence while you're reading these Job Select cards, and you're like, I'm not sure if this is good or not, most of them are pretty good, and especially in Sealed, like, they give you a mana sink, a thing to do with your mana, make your 1/1 tokens relevant, put a Warrior Sword on it. It's not the most exciting thing, but, it can definitely win a game of Sealed if it goes long. Next up, let's cover some cards that might not look amazing if you're just seeing them for the first time, but I think are pretty good. So first one is kind of a weird, cool one. We usually don't get this kind of card at common. But Call the Mountain Chocobo is a 4 mana red sorcery. You make a 2/2 Chocobo token, which has landfall, gets +1/+0, and you search your library for a mountain. So already, like 2/2, go and get a land. Like, that's not the worst. But it also has flashback. So yeah, this is a lot of value on just the common, right? You're getting 4 game pieces, basically. This is a card that I would play in basically all of my red decks, as long as they're not super duper aggressive. And even in those aggressive decks, like, I think this is a fine filler card for those decks. Demon Wall is kind of a weird one. So this is a 2 mana 3/3 Defender Menace creature. Great combo of abilities, of course. And it says as long as you have a counter on this creature, it can attack as if it didn't have Defender. And has the 6 mana ability to put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So yeah, I think just baseline, this card's pretty solid, right? Defends early, it's an artifact creature, and there's a slight artifact theme. But then late game, it turns into a 5/5 menace, 7/7 menace, right? You can keep upping this. So yeah, I would play this card even if you don't have any other cards that put counters on creatures. This is kind of self-sufficient, fine early and pretty good late. Precious Wandering kind of looks like a clunky, not so great ramp spell, but I think it's a little bit better than that. So this is a 3 mana instant that says search your library for a basic land or town card. Towns, of course, being these the tapped land of the set. So search your library for a basic land or a town, put it in the battlefield, and shuffle. And you get to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So that's, one way you can make your Demon Wall attack on its own. This being an instance, a pretty big deal because you can, like, win a combat early in the game and get your land. So you can kind of engineer a 2-for-1 if things line up nicely. But, even if you don't end up engineering a combat 2-for-1, just growing a creature and then getting a land, like, I think it's definitely serviceable ramp. A card that you might put to the side and be like, it's too clunky, but I do think this one's pretty solid. I probably don't play this if I'm just a 2-color deck, but if you're splashing at all, I think it's a card you want to include. Poison the Waters is a 2 mana sorcery that has 2 modes. Either give all creatures -1/-1 until end of turn, or target player reveals their hand. You take an artifact or a creature. That player discards it. I would always play this in my sealed deck if I'm playing black. The modality on it's great because, you know, the -1/-1, it's going to be very good against the aggro decks. And there's actually quite a few X1s in this format. A lot of 1 toughness creatures. So that kills quite a bit. And then if you're facing the slower deck, the hand disruption is really good. So just a very good split of abilities. And yeah, I generally wouldn't leave this one in the sideboard if I was playing black. Balaamti Rexar is a card that looks like cards we've seen quite often. You know, we always get the 6 mana, 6/6. Maybe a keyword ability, gain some life. This one even has forest cycling. I'm calling this one out because the other cards in this cycle, all the land cyclers, are not particularly good. I might play them if I really just needed a playable. But the green one here, I do think this card's really good, and it's a pull in the green. Like, if you have 2 of these, like, that is a reason to play green. Almost the level of, like, a good uncommon. It's pretty impactful. Blitzball is a cool one. So this is a 3-mana artifact, taps to add a mana of any color, and if you deal damage to your opponent with a legend, you can sack this and draw 2 cards. So this is great if you're multicolor, if you're splashing at all, but there are so many legends in the set, and so you're really going to be able to activate that pretty consistently. Like, just being able to cash in your mana rock after it's done its job is really great. So again, just like the 3-mana ramp spell we were talking about, where if you're splashing at all, if you've got expensive cards, I would say once you've got like 3, 4, 5 legends, like that's where I'm really happy playing Blitzball. And then speaking of multicolor stuff, just kind of want to talk about green and multicolor green in this format. So we have Blitzball, which is a common. Yeah, it's a common 5-color fixer. There's also the town lands, like I mentioned. There's also a few fixing lands at common. So there is a good amount of fixing in this set. It's not as much as Tarkir. You know, if you played Tarkir, that was a ton of fixing. This set is obviously less than that, but I think a lot of your seal pools are going to lend themselves to multicolor decks. Especially because, I'm not going to go through all these cards here, but if you just go through all of the gold, green, signpost 2-color uncommons, they're all really strong cards. Like, you're going to end up with good payoffs for being multicolor in a lot of your pools, just by virtue of being like, oh, I've got all these green 2-color cards that tend to be just pretty good when I cast them. A lot of them don't really need synergy or anything. They're just good cards, right? So I do imagine that a lot of sealed pools are going to want to be multicolor to some degree, but especially multicolor green. I think that's something you should look for in your pool. And then a few rares I want to touch on here. So there's this cycle of crystals, like darkness crystal, water crystal, wind crystal. There's one for each color. And I think these are probably playable in sealed. So in draft, probably slightly too slow, but they're the kind of cards that you just need like that 1 or 2 extra turns that you get in sealed to make them pretty good. So these are all 4-mana artifacts that make your spells of that color cheaper. Then they'll have some effect, just like a passive ability. For example, the Wind Crystal says whenever you gain life, you gain twice that much life. But then they have like a very impactful 6-mana ability. So for example, this one gives all your creatures flying and lifelink till end of turn. Or the Water Crystal says each opponent mills cards equal to the number of cards in your hand, which doesn't sound like a lot, but the passive on this is if your opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill that many +4. So you kill them pretty quickly with that. Darkness Crystal, if a creature your opponent controls dies, exile instead, you gain 2 life, and then later in the game at some point, you can pay 6 mana, put one of those cards that you exiled onto the battlefield with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. So, you're kind of seeing what I'm getting at here, where they're slow abilities. But I think if your deck needs a bit of power, needs a bit of a finisher, needs some impactful cards, I think these can make the cut. And it's very easy, I think, to just look at this and be like, commander card, throw it aside, I don't want it. I would recommend these in some decks if you're missing some power. And then just kind of for fun, I want to pick out what I think is the card you most hope to open in your sealed pool. And I think that's Dion here. So if you haven't seen Dion, it's a 4-mana 3/3 that makes a 2/2 token when it enters, and knights you control have flying on your turn. And Dion's a knight, and the token you make is a knight. So you're getting 4 mana for 5/5 worth of stats over 2 bodies. That's already great. Like, that is already fantastic. It also has the ability to pay 6 mana, exile Dion, flip it into this saga creature that has a bunch of absurd abilities. Like, it's a 5/5 flyer that you put a counter on all your creatures for the first 2 chapters and they gain flying. 3rd chapter, you can destroy a permanent and flip it back to Dion. Like, the game is probably going to be over at that point. But yeah, this card's amazing. It's also a splashable card. Obviously, you might have some trouble activating the 6-mana ability, but I don't think you need to activate that ability for the card to be good. So yeah, just a quick little video here. Hope you enjoyed. If you want an overview of all the cards in the set, I'm also going to be posting my tier list in the description. So if you're just like, hey, like, this is a card that I don't know how good it is, if you just want a quick little looking at that, you can reference that tier list, that 17 lands tier list. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe, like, and comment, all that good stuff. Hope you enjoyed, and good luck with your pre-release, everybody. See you later.